Alright, welcome back. Today we're going to do a lot of work on the fuel lines on this truck, and then I'll show you how to bleed an 8V92 here. It's pretty difficult with just a little gear pump. They don't really pull fuel at all, so you really have to get fuel in everywhere you possibly can. So we'll replace this hose, which is the main supply hose, on the draw side after the filters, and this is the pressure off of the pump here, and then from there it splits on this filter here to the heads and the return. This is the line coming from the tanks. It is quite old, but as I am going to move the tanks back soon, I'm going to leave that one for now because I don't want to waste a hose. The main thing I'm worried about is this hose, which is quite important when you are trying to bleed, in order to have it sitting up high so I can pour fuel down it. It's very old, and I'm scared I'm going to break the line. Alright, the GoPro died on me here, so I'm going to have to do this on my phone, so sorry if it's got a bit of wind noise. I left the two lines in here that to run to the heads, because in order to take them off on the other end, I would have to strip off a lot of my water lines and take the tops off the thermostats and drain the water, which I'm going to put new thermostats in anyway, so we'll save that for later. And they are a bit of an interesting style of fitting here. Also took off this brake line right there because it was getting kind of frayed, so I figured I'd get it made at the same time. A couple things to remember when working on fittings like this is don't tighten down one end until you have the other end started. Always start the non-swivel end if there's a non-swivel end first, and never start taking off a line that hasn't been cracked loose without making sure that there's no pressure on the fitting. So if I was taking off this line here, I would be trying to pull the wrench towards me, which would, on a 90-degree elbow like this, would tend to put a lot of stress right in here. And if you grab it and yank it, you can crack off a fitting. So always put a wrench on and push the opposite way to make sure that there's no stress being transferred through the fitting. I had a bunch of these lines off a couple weeks ago because I had ran the thing out of fuel. I had a bad fuel. Well, I didn't run it out of fuel, but this filter, it was an old one that had a plastic bottom on the water separator, and it cracked, and I ended up sucking air through the whole fuel system. It was a bear to get it bled and running again, but I figured out how to do it fairly easily, so I'm going to redo that today just to make sure that I got it right. But that was a complete air from the filter all the way through to the injector tips. I didn't have to crack any injector lines to get it running. I'll show you what I did in a little bit here. So I also have a jerry can. It would be nice to have a little jerry can to fill the lines, but I'm just kind of stuck with a big one, so we'll use that with just a little bit of fuel in so we don't make a mess everywhere. Alright, so I've got everything mostly on and tightened. I have this one yet to go on. I'm going to try to put a bit of fuel in there first in that line. This is the pressure line off the pump. The fuel goes, if you can see that shiny fitting there, which is coming off the top of the pump. Anyway, that bottom fitting is the draw side, the top fitting is the pressure side. So this leads into that filter, which is on a pressure side filter, and then it splits between the heads here and this line. I had misspoke in the first video there. This line is for the fuel pressure gauge. So I've tightened down this line, which I'm going to take off again and fill with fuel, but for now I just tighten it down because I wanted to make sure everything works before I start to prime anything. And then this line I will get started on here, then take it back off, and then I will fill. Actually, I'm going to leave this off instead and pour fuel in here. The filter should still be full of fuel this time because it did not get sucked dry. So I will put as much fuel as I can in here just so the engine has at least this filter's worth to work with until the air gets pushed through the system. The first time I did this, I was about 2 hours from home, and I was scared that it was just going to run until this filter had been sucked dry and that I'd get stuck on the side of the road somewhere. But it seemed to pull everything through just fine. It never lost power, never hiccuped. So I think this should still work fine. I'm not sure I'll be able to get any fuel in this line and then get it on. It's a lot easier with old lines because they're conformed to where they have to go. Same with this line, it might be harder to get it back on this fitting with fuel in it than it was the first time. So that's why I made sure I had it on, and hopefully some of the tension in this hose is starting to get taken out with that being on there. So alright, let's get at the actual bleeding side of it now. Again, just to recap in case anyone skipped ahead, this is the pressure line off of the pump, which feeds into this filter and line block that feeds one line to each head. And this, which I have taken off here at the last draw side filter, is the main draw line. Now, if you could not get at the top line here, the pressure side, you can fill the pump by taking the draw side hose and then lifting it up above the radiator and filling it full of fuel and then blowing fuel down into the pump. Try pressurizing it that way. It should be able to turn on fairly quickly and start burning the fuel that's sitting in this line, which is just being gravity fed into the pump. And then once you have it running, you would take this line, refill it with fuel, and put your thumb over it like so, and get it down to the fitting and get it on without losing much fuel, which you may or may not be able to do. But in this case, since I can get at the pressure side line, I'm going to put this over here and then simply fill this line, which is again on the high side of the pump. We'll fill the pump, and hopefully fuel will keep running down through the pump, down into this line, and start coming out this end. See if that works. The wind's picking up here, so it might get a little bit too noisy, but I filled this line up with fuel, waited till it ran down as far as it would, and then topped it up. Got it on this fitting without losing very much fuel. Although one thing I should have mentioned before I started is make sure you double check all your fittings, because you can get sidetracked on one and the other and forget. And I forgotten to tighten up that little fella down in there. It's pretty hard to get at, and I kind of forgot about it. But I quick snugged that up. So as far as I know, there should be an amount of fuel in every line here. So I guess all that's left is to give it a try and see what happens. So I did not run it before I took any of the lines off. Just to see how that would happen if we run into any troubles, rather than cheating and having it all aired up here, so, or fueled up. So let's see what'll happen. I haven't run this in a couple weeks, but I'm guessing it'll fire right up. Fingers crossed. There we go. Let it run for a bit. Make sure we don't run it out of fuel. But it should be good. So again, the easiest way I found to bleed this engine is to pull the draw line off, the last line before the pump, hold it up high as you can, maybe zip tie it to the rad, fill it full of fuel, wait a while till the fuel runs down through into the pump, top it up again, hop in the truck, crank it till it fires. Once it's running, just so running, turn it off, top up the line again, put your thumb over the end of the line and quick pop it back on the fitting. And if your filters are still full, you should be okay. Sure beats everything else we had tried, pressurizing the tank and all that other stuff. Might be a little bit messier than pressurizing the tank, but it's pretty much as fast. You can do it anywhere as long as you have a bit of fuel on hand. And these trucks will not self-prime. Like, you can't drag them around, try to suck fuel into the engine. It just will not work. You need to put fuel in the pump. There's just no other way. So, thanks for watching.